The most important thing with belt care, belt maintenance, and this applies to all belts regardless of which type you have, is proper storage. So when you're not using the belt, you want to store it in a climate controlled environment. You don't want to leave this in, say, your garage gym or something like that, especially if you're in an area that has high humidity. If you want to put a number on it, we could call it, about 65% relative humidity. You want to be under that for belt storage so we prevent mold and things like that. Going beyond storage, what you might do for each belt is going to depend on what type of belt you have. By type, I mean the construction of the belt, not like 3-inch, 4-inch, or lever versus prong. It's the construction, the type of leather that's used on each belt. What I'm going to show you, these are the things that we use in the shop. These are the things that when a belt comes to you from Dominion, they're already going to be pre-treated with. So this is not something you've got to do on day one. In some instances, you may not have to do it ever, but if you need to do it or if you want to do it, we're going to show you how. The first thing is Neatsfoot oil. So Neatsfoot oil is used to condition leather. It's used to soften leather. And if you're going to be using this at home, one of these like 3-inch foam brushes works really good for our belts as far as applying it. The second one is something called Bick 4. This is probably the best stuff that we've come across as far as cleaning, conditioning, maintaining several different types of leather. The last thing I'll show you is what we call a Suede cleaning kit. It's very simple. It's essentially just a magic eraser and a brush. And this is what you would use to clean a suede surface on a belt. The important thing with suede is you want to think of it as dry clean only. You don't want to use any sort of liquid cleaners, oils, anything like that on suede. The thing that works best is one of these very simple suede cleaning kits. Let's start with the easiest belt first. This is a double suede belt. I call it a double suede because it's got suede on both sides. This belt, the oil content of the leather in the middle is effectively sealed in by the suede that's on both sides. So this never needs any oil added to it. In fact, you don't want to add or try to add any oil to it because you don't want to get anything on this suede that would be a liquid that would discolor it or stain it or anything like that. The only thing you would ever want to use on suede to spot clean it or to kind of brush up the nap is one of our suede cleaning kits. I'll show this to you later, but essentially you would use the eraser part of this to brush up the nap, to remove the stain. I'll demo this a little bit later. But the suede belt is nice because it's a very low maintenance belt, and the only thing you would ever have to do with it is just spot clean it if you want to. Moving on, we'll talk about our single plies. Our single ply belts basically come in two flavors. We've got either a dyed single ply or an undyed and oiled single ply. I'll talk about the dyed one first. On the dye surface, this has been dyed and also sealed. So it is somewhat permeable. You can get oil to pass through the sealant, but it takes a little bit of technique to actually get it to absorb evenly. And what can happen is if it's not perfectly even, you can end up with a little bit of a splotchy finish if you try to use oil and you don't really know what you're doing. So what I would recommend on a dyed single ply, I'd use Bick 4. This can be used anytime you want to give this a little conditioning, anytime you want to polish it up, shine it up. The Bick 4 works great for that. And in many cases, this would be all that you would ever need to do. If you wanted to apply Neatsfoot, let's say you're in a really, really dry climate, you're in Arizona or something like that, things tend to dry out, and you want to apply Neatsfoot oil to this. It might be something you would do once a year, maybe even once every 2 years. I would apply that on a dyed single ply to the inside only. So I'd pour some of this into a small paint tray, take my brush, and you just want the thinnest, most even coat that you can get on this belt. I'll show you on our oiling table later on how we do it in the shop. But that's all I would do. On a single ply that's dyed, Bick 4 on the outside, and if needed, and it won't be very often, you can apply a thin, even coat of Neatsfoot to the inside. Next, we've got our oiled single ply. You can maintain this exactly the way you would a dyed single ply in that you can use Bick 4 to polish, shine the outside, and if needed, you can put a thin coat of Neatsfoot oil on the inside. When you put that coat on the inside, it will actually penetrate all the way through the full thickness of the leather. So it's not necessary to apply Neatsfoot, say, to both sides. You can get away with just putting it on the inside. I should mention that when you put Neatsfoot oil on a belt, you want to do it at a time when you can give it 24 hours, more or less, to dry out before you use the belt again. That gives it enough time to absorb into the leather. On an undyed single ply, if you want to, say, make this outside darker, you can apply Neatsfoot oil to the outside. If you want to darken it, that's a good way to do it. It's perfectly fine to only ever apply Neatsfoot oil to the inside of a single ply. But if you specifically want to darken the outside, you absolutely can apply Neatsfoot oil to the outside and it'll darken it up. When you first put this on, it's going to look very dark, and that color is going to settle out over about 48 hours. So it'll be 2 days from the time you put this on until you know the color that you're going to end up with. So I would say put the least amount that you can get an even coat with at first. Wait a day or two, see what you've got, see if you're happy with it, and if you want to darken it more, you can always add another coat. You can't take oil out, but you can always add more. One last thing on the single ply belts. The single ply belt is going to have the outside, which is the smooth side, and the inside, which is the rough side. And I've talked a lot about Bick 4. I would only put the Bick 4 on the outside. You're not going to get this to be able to apply evenly on the inside, it being a rough surface. So on the single ply, Bick 4 on the outside, and if needed, you can apply the Neatsfoot oil to the inside, but I wouldn't try to put Bick 4 on the inside of a single ply. All right, onto our double plies. This is a double ply that has veg tan leather on both sides, okay? There's no suede on this double ply. For this one, we're gonna go back to our old friend, the Bick 4. I would use Bick 4 on both sides of this belt. That'll shine it up. That'll give it all the moisture content it's gonna need. And that's all you'd really need for this belt. If you wanted to darken this belt and also condition it, you can absolutely use Neatsfoot as well, okay? But again, especially on these double ply belts that have skirting leather on the outside, you can darken this a lot if you get too much oil on it. So just be very careful if you're gonna use Neatsfoot on a double ply. Be aware that you can quickly get more oil than you want on it, and just be very careful. Another type of double ply that we have is one that has skirting leather, smooth leather on the outside, and has suede on the inside. On this belt, again, remember we said suede is dry clean only. So if you wanted to spot clean the inside of one of these belts, you would use the suede cleaning kit. And then on the outside, right back to our trusty old friend, the Bick 4. This is the only thing I'd really use on the outside, unless you specifically want to darken it again. You could use the Neatsfoot on one of these belts. And this is kind of a special case double ply. This is water buffalo on the outside, and it's got suede on the inside. We know what to do with suede, the suede cleaning kit. It's dry clean only. And on the outside, the water buffalo specifically has a special finish on it that effectively seals in all the moisture and oil content on this belt. You don't want to add oil to water buffalo. What you can use though is the one we keep coming back to, Bick 4. That'll clean this up, polish it up really nicely, and Bick 4 is the only thing that I would use on water buffalo. The last big question, and I mentioned this a little bit when I was talking about the belts, is timing on all of this. When would you want to do it? As far as cleaning the suede, you can do that any time that you want to. That's fine. And again, it needs no other maintenance really, other than just storing it in a humidity controlled environment when you're not using. If you're using Bick 4 on one of our other belts for the purposes of just polishing it up and shining it up, you can do that really as often as you like. You're not going to hurt the belt. Anytime you just want to brighten it up, make it look a little newer, you can use this. If you're using Bick 4 for the purposes of conditioning, that's going to depend on your location and how dry the climate is. Some of the driest climates, you might do this once a year. Some places it might be every couple of years. And some places like where we are here in our shop, we're on the east coast of Central Florida. Things don't tend to dry out here. I have belts in the shop that have been here 10 years that have never had anything added to them. So it's not something that you've ever got to do frequently. And usually with these types of things that we're talking about, less is more, especially if we're talking about adding Neatsfoot oil. This would certainly be something that you do very seldom, if ever, depending on where you are. Less is more, don't overdo it. And again, proper storage when not in use is the most important thing. The Suede cleaning kit is the simplest one of all. You're just going to take your block. You can go over the entire belt. You can go over just the spots you want to treat. The idea is going to be multiple directions, especially if you're trying to remove a stain. And then the brush just brushes away any excess from the eraser block. And it also pulls the nap of the Suede back up. When you're applying Bick 4 to a belt, you want to apply it to the cloth and then rub it into the belt. You don't want to squeeze it directly on the belt itself. I'm just going to get a dime-sized amount to start with. You always want to think about applying this over the largest area possible and then going back and polishing and adding more as necessary. You don't ever want a concentrated spot of anything when you're applying cleaners or conditioners or anything like that to leather. When you get up towards the buckle end, you'll have to do a little bit of finger gymnastics to get in all the nooks and crannies, but it's really not that bad. All right, and that's how you do a quick clean and polish essentially with Bic 4. All right, so I'm going to apply Neatsfoot oil to the inside of this single ply. And again, for the purposes of conditioning, the inside of the single ply is the only spot that you would ever need to apply this. You'd apply it to the outside only if you wanted to darken it. I may have to get a little bit more loaded up on my brush so I can get going here. But at some point, there it goes. We'll get to the point where we can get a nice even coat that will start to spread. And I'll usually start in the middle and kind of work my way out. When I get down here around the holes, I just want to be careful that I don't push down too much and let the oil rather run into the hole and around to the other side. That would be especially important if you were doing this on a belt that, say, had Suede on the other side. You want to make sure this oil never touches that Suede, and just be very careful to keep the oil all on the side of the belt that you're trying to treat. And I'm not going to load up my brush again unless I absolutely have to. If I can make it all the way to the end, then I'm good to go. And then we would let this dry. Again, on a belt that you're applying oil to like this, you'd want to let it dry for about 24 hours before you're going to use this belt again to prevent any oil transfer to your clothing. So I hope this has been helpful. If it has, please like and subscribe. I will put links to everything we talked about today in the description on this video. If you want to check out any of our belts, DominionStrengthTraining.com. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.